Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche organization with your daily video update for October 13th, 2025. Well, we have some extraordinary breaking developments that have just occurred. At long last, the hostages, the remaining living hostages, all 20 of them, have been freed by Hamas and the other Palestinian groups. They were ordered released based on the agreement reached between President Trump, the Israeli government, and Hamas. This was after 738 days of captivity. The remaining hostages released will be the bodies of those who died while they were in captivity. Later today, it's expected that somewhere close to 2,000 Palestinian prisoners will be released by the Israelis as part of that agreement. Now, at the same time, there's a signing ceremony today in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, presided over by President Trump and President el-Sisi of Egypt. And they're expecting at least 20 leaders of various nations, including a number from Europe, Erdogan from Turkey, King Abdullah from Jordan is expected to be there. And the question is, how will they build on this initial agreement, which was reached largely due to pressure applied by President Trump on Hamas, but also especially on Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, after these are concluded, the meeting in Sharm el-Sheikh will take on the discussion of what's the next phase, including the post-war governance of Gaza, as well as reconstruction. And this is going to be a very hard negotiation. The Egyptians have a plan for reconstruction. We have a plan that would go further than the Egyptian plan, the LaRouche Oasis Plan. But minimally, they're going to be discussing how to rebuild Gaza, which has been thoroughly destroyed. And it also will include a question of how to care for nearly 2 million people, or maybe more than 2 million people, who need food, who need shelter, who need medical attention. There's been mass destruction. There's hardly a building that remains standing after this long siege by Israel. And the situation overall is unlivable. Some of the other questions is, where will the population of Gaza go while there is a reconstruction? The Egyptians have made it clear they don't want them coming into Egypt. Netanyahu and his hardcore Greater Israel fanatics want to keep them, throw them out of Palestine altogether. The question then is, well, what will be reconstructed and who's going to pay for it? Now, the longer term question is, will they allow the people of Gaza to remain in Palestine? And will there be a Palestinian state? Or will Israel then turn around and go for an annexation of more land in the West Bank, cleared by violent settlers who are attacking the local residents? So Israel Katz, the defense minister of Israel, made a comment to the Hebrew language press where he said, after the hostages are released, the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, will go in and destroy the whole tunnel system, try to gather and collect whatever ammunition and weapons are left there. And if Hamas activists do not surrender, they'll probably try to kill them, because they want to eliminate the threat of Hamas in a future post-occupation government. Now, will they then revive the Gaza Riviera plan, or is there something better? The Egyptian plan actually includes reconstruction, but the real reconstruction is going to require an enormous effort by many countries, which will include dealing with the shortage of water, power, the upgrading of the port, upgrading of communications, transportation. So we're barely at the beginning of this. But it's important to note that President Trump did deliver on his promise to bring the Israelis into support of the ceasefire. And now let's see if the ceasefire can be made to hold. It's going to require continued vigilance by the United States especially, but hopefully with partnership with Europe and the Arab governments, which up to this point had a lot to say but did very little to make this work. So an extremely exciting moment. It shows that diplomacy can work and that negotiations can function. So it brings up a second question. If Netanyahu can be brought and Hamas be brought to reach an agreement for a ceasefire, what about Zelensky? Zelensky keeps saying he wants a ceasefire, that Russia won't have a ceasefire, and yet Zelensky, while he's asking for a ceasefire, is going around the world demanding more weapons, more money, more support. And the delusional leaders of Europe are taxing heavily the population of Europe to buy more weapons and to talk about the possibility of placing long-range missiles in Ukraine that can hit deep inside Russia. And this, of course, could lead, as the Russians are saying, if Western technology and Western logistical support is required for these strikes inside Russia, that would make the West partners in the war against Russia and make them therefore targets. So it's interesting, Putin has several times recently announced his support for the Trump peace plan in Gaza. So what about Ukraine? Will Trump come down on Zelensky as he has on Netanyahu? Now, another thing to look at, keep an eye on the takeover of U.S. social media, typified by what Larry Ellison of Oracle just did to take over TikTok as part of a growing Paramount Global company, which also is the parent company of CBS, the legacy television network. The idea of takeover of legacy media and now extending it to social media, combined with censorship policies, raises the question of will there be an alternative voice to that of the Zionists? Because Larry Ellison is a hardcore supporter of Greater Israel. And he and his son, who will now be running TikTok, their company Skydance is the one, as I said, that bought Paramount Global. And they may be making a run as well for CNN. So you might ask the question, isn't much of the so-called legacy media already pro-Zionist? Well, the answer is yes. All you have to do is look at the coverage, which until recently covered up the Israeli genocide policy against the people of Palestine, of Gaza. So why do they need more? Well, they're looking to extend this to social media. And what came out of the whole Charlie Kirk affair, the assassination and then the aftermath, the discussion, is that the leading Zionists in the United States were fearful that because of TikTok and other social media that's not under their control, the truth was getting out about what was going on in Gaza, what the Netanyahu regime was doing, and therefore was turning young Americans, including conservative Republicans and young American Jews, against the Zionists in Israel. So what's the solution? Change the policy? No, control the media. And this is something that's very dangerous. We had a discussion on the Manhattan Project Saturday with Mike Robinson of the UK column, where he went through, again, a masterful discussion of the kinds of technologies being deployed by the tech companies, Silicon Valley and their partners in the United Kingdom and now in Europe, to control the narrative, to use censorship. So I'd encourage people to listen to that discussion from Mike Robinson to get a picture of how that's going and what they're doing. And we'll have more of an update on the situation in Gaza and also the outcome of the Sharm el-Sheikh meeting. These are extremely dense moments of time where events are occurring which will shape the future many decades away from us now. And that's why it's so important that people have accurate intelligence and know what is actually going on as opposed to the narrative that you're supposed to listen to. And that's why a subscription to our publication and circulating our daily updates and our other videos is so important to give people the truth outside of the control of the mainstream media and now over the controlled social media if Ellison and his allies are successful. So stay tuned to the station for more on that.